Some people say that Ruth and Naomi are an example in the Bible of a godly lesbian love relationship. And in today's video, I'm going to answer that question based on 6 main talking points. Now, there's so much misinformation out there. The last thing I'm going to mention in today's video is a big mistake I see so many people making when it comes to this topic. So make sure you're not one of them. So the first point I want to deal with in today's video is the idea that Ruth remarried but only used her second husband as some sort of sperm donor. We can look at one of the last verses in the book of Ruth. It's here in Ruth chapter 4 verse 16, and notice what it says. It says, "And Naomi took the child and laid it in her bosom and became nurse unto it." So because of a passage like this in the book of Ruth, they say Boaz was just a sperm donor. He was facilitating the child by ultimately giving the child to Ruth and Naomi. The big problem with taking a position like this is it totally destroys the context of what we've seen so far in the Bible. This was a tradition that was being enacted, which had nothing to do with Boaz being a surrogate, so to speak, a sperm donor for the sake of Ruth and Naomi. This was all in regards to inheritance, and we know this because we can look at an example right here from Deuteronomy chapter 25 verse 5 to 10. Now this is a couple of books before the book of Ruth, and notice what it says. It says, "If brethren dwell together and one of them die and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her and take her to him to wife and perform the duty of an husband's brother unto her." So the reason Boaz is marrying Ruth is to adhere to this tradition, and more specifically to the specific child in this situation that was given to Naomi. As we continue into verse 6, what does it say? "And it shall be the firstborn," right, which will be the child we just saw given to Naomi, "which she bears shall succeed in the name of his brother, which was dead, that his name shall not be put out of Israel." So if anyone ever tries to say to you, Boaz was just acting as a sperm donor to facilitate this lesbian relationship, just quickly point them back to Deuteronomy chapter 25 verse 5 to 10, and you can see quite clearly that Boaz was adhering to the tradition. That's why the child was given to Naomi in this sort of situation. Now, number 3 is actually one which on the outset is actually a bit convincing. But before we do this, let's quickly touch on number 2 in today's video, which is the claim that is made that when you read through the short book of Ruth, the Bible never says anywhere that Ruth is in love with Boaz or that Boaz is in love with Ruth. And when you think about an argument like this, you quickly realize that this doesn't really hold much weight, because by that standard, we could say that the first marriage we see in the Bible, Adam and Eve, there was no love. Now, number 4 is actually a funny one. If we follow that argument, you'll hear in a moment to its logical conclusion. But I did say a moment ago that number 3 seems quite convincing before you actually start to unpack it. So number 3 is the fact that in 2 verses in the book of Ruth, this is used in weddings today. We could look at the verses right here. It's Ruth chapter 1 verse 16 to 17. As you can see here, "Entreat me not to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and where you are buried, I will be buried. The Lord do so to me and more also, but death part you and me." So people will say, because people use this in their vows and their marriage ceremony today, this means that Ruth and Naomi had some sort of lesbian relationship. The problem with this is, firstly, this would just be someone taking something out of context. I can give you even another example in regards to marriage that's taken from the Bible out of context. If you've heard of this statement, which is used in marriages as well, that a threefold cord is not easily broken, people use that in marriage to symbolize a man, a woman, and God ultimately being a unified unit. But the fact of the matter is, in Ecclesiastes, where this actually comes from, chapter 4, verse 12, as you can see, it says, "And if one prevail against him, 2 shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not easily broken." The problem you're going to find immediately is when you actually go back to this passage, as you can see here from verse 9, you can see that the context of this passage is not even talking about marriage in the first place. So just because people take 2 passages out of the Bible out of context, that doesn't mean that the original context is the same as the way in which it's being used today, does it? Now, the 4th one we're going to look at today, which I said was actually quite funny, is the fact that People claim that in the book of Ruth, it says that Ruth loves Naomi in an erotic kind of sexual way, which has sexual connotations when you compare it to the book of Song of Solomon. So they base this on Ruth chapter 4 verse 15, as you can see here, when it says, and he shall be, talking about the son that Ruth had, to thee a restorer of life and a nourisher of thine old age, for your daughter-in-law, speaking about Ruth, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him. So people say that this word here, loveth, is the same word which is used in the book of Song of Solomon, which is all about love between a man and a woman. I'm going to give you 3 examples before we move on to point number 5 in today's video. And let me know which one is the most funniest based on this argument which is ultimately being used. So the first out of 3 examples I'll give you, as you can see, is from Leviticus chapter 19 verse 18. And notice what it says: you shall not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love, same word, thy neighbor as you love yourself, I the Lord. The second example here is from Genesis 22 verse 2, and it says, and he said, take now thy son, thine only, Isaac, whom you lovest, same word, and get thee into the land of Moriah. Now the third example for point number 4 is here in Genesis 27, a few pages to the right, and make me savory meat such as I love, same word, and bring to me that I may eat and that my soul may bless thee before I die. I've looked at where the same root word is used to love your neighbor or to love your son, and most comically to even love food. So can you see how that kind of argument, because this same word is used in Song of Solomon, really reduces to folly when you actually follow this kind of argument to its logical conclusion. Now, I said that the last thing we're going to cover today is a mistake that so many people make. Before we get to that, let's deal with number 5 very quickly. And if you remember what we talked about in verse 1, that Boaz was some sort of surrogate or some sort of sperm donor, some people even go as far as to say that it's Ruth and Naomi's son and not even Boaz's. And we can answer this question quite quickly by just looking at Ruth chapter 4 verse 21, where in the family tree it talks about how Salmon begat Boaz and Boaz begat Obed. So in the family tree, it's quite clearly seen that Boaz is listed as the father, is his son, even though there's tradition behind what's actually going on. Now, number 6, like I said at the start of this video, is a big mistake I see so many people making, and I don't want you to be one of them. And this is based on one verse in the book of Ruth, in Ruth chapter 1 verse 14. And this is all centered around this word right here, which is klang, right? In Hebrew it's dabak. And people basically say that Ruth clinging to Naomi, which is synonymous with what Adam and Eve did in Genesis chapter 2 verse 24, where it says, therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and shall cleave, same word, dabak, to his wife. The problem with using this Hebrew argument is in the very next chapter in the book of Ruth, in verses 8, in verses 21, and in verses 23, the same word in Hebrew, dabak, is used for Ruth clinging or holding fast to her male and female co-workers. So we obviously know that Ruth is not in some sort of sexual or sensual relationship with Naomi, and also female and male co-workers, is she? But in the next video, we're going to deal with the most famous alleged gay couple in the Bible.